Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today's video, waiver wire, week 11. I've got 10 must-add players for you this week. Guys, we're getting into the home stretch of the season. This is the week. These guys are very valuable players to your team rest of season. These are some guys on the wire that can give you an immediate return, and also some players that can be great for the fantasy playoffs. So make sure you're getting through each and every player in this video. And of course, we're late in the season. Do not be afraid to spend that fab or spend that priority on these guys. It's time to make some decisions that are going to make or break your season here. So make sure you're aggressive with some of these players. If you guys enjoy the video, let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, please, if you enjoyed, and drop a comment down below with any players you're looking to add or drop this week. There were some interesting drops this past week. I saw someone drop Elijah Mitchell before the week started, but not someone we'll talk about. Everybody here is 50% rostered or less. We got one right on the 50% threshold that I do think we need to talk about. For some of you in some deeper leagues, these guys might not be as available as some of us in 10 or 12 team leagues, but we'll touch on a few others that could be at a much lower roster percentage at the end. Rashad White starts us off, 44% rostered. Been talking about him as a second half sleeper. If you guys didn't check out that video, those guys are crushing it right now. Rashad White up to 44%, got the start in Germany. I think that's something that people were missing here. I know Fournette has that hip pointer injury, so that could be something a lot of people were paying attention to. But Rashad White just got the start and was actually very efficient on the ground. This team finally was able to run the ball. It took leaving America to do that, apparently. 22 rushes for 105 yards. Surprising part was not targeted at all, which was a little weird to see considering where Rashad White's role has come from, has been in the receiving game, but something that will likely change moving forward. You could see some involvement from Keyshawn Vaughn. You definitely will if Fournette misses time, but it's looking like White is going to be the number one option in Tampa Bay regardless. So if he's available, absolutely need to add him. Now, he's proved to be the more efficient option, which is great, but heading into the bye week, could be a player a lot of people want to add regardless of the bye coming up and not being able to play him. But the matchups aren't great for the next 3 weeks. Cleveland, which is a good matchup for him, of course. We saw the Dolphins run all over the Browns last week, but New Orleans and San Francisco follow. Now, Najee Harris had a great week against New Orleans, so I could be wrong in thinking that the Saints are a quality run defense, but the 49ers certainly are one. So some good matchups and ones that you could certainly play him in, but again, coming off the bye, so there is some time you're going to have to wait to be able to play him. Next up, another one highly rostered, but still worthy of discussing, Kyren Williams, 42% rostered right now, a player a lot of your fantasy teammates were probably adding and hanging on to while he was out. We finally saw him this week and definitely eased into the offense. 1 attempt for 9 yards, did lead running backs in receptions, 3 receptions, 30 yards through the air. I think that's a very important thing to note here because Darrell Henderson has been that guy in the receiving game for this team, and I think it speaks volumes, and he's got the pass blocking chops. That is why Cam Akers has been on the bad side here with McVay, is they haven't liked what he's been able to do from a pass blocking perspective. And that's going to keep you off the field. Kyren Williams has been able to do that. I think as these two players continue to struggle on the ground and not be able to run the ball, I think they both had like 6 carries for 18 yards, something like that this past week. I think this is a team that might just give Kyren Williams the ball here and let him run with this offense because I think they're tired of both of these two players that just haven't given them nearly enough. This team is in disarray, quite frankly. Like the offensive line isn't where it needs to be, but McVay spoke post-game about there needs to be some changes with this offense and with this team, and I think it could start in the backfield because these two have not done anything. They've been given 10 weeks of runway here, and we haven't seen enough, and Kyren Williams is that new option, someone that has there's obviously that mystery of what he can do for this offense. Upcoming schedule features New Orleans, Kansas City, and Seattle. All 3 of those are ones I think that are playable in. But again, we're going to have to learn a bit more about how this works out with him coming back from the injury before we play him. So still, in my mind, like a stash type of play. Third up here at the running back position, Jaylen Warren, 27% rostered. I had to play him in one of my leagues this week, and he did just enough. He continues to make the most of his opportunities. He had 77 total yards on 12 touches, getting things tighter when it comes to snaps as well. 47 snaps for Najee Harris, 34 for Warren, and he ran only 2 less routes than Najee. Now, I would be even more excited about this guy if Najee didn't have a solid week, which he did. He had 22 carries for 99 yards, so had a good week. And if it was a down week, we could be even more excited about Warren. But I'm just looking at this Tomlin quote here that, he's always had that bell cow approach to things. And I think now he's willing to make this adjustment. A quote from postgame. Yes, we've been talking about it. Jalen's been playing well and deserving of more reps. And what transpired today was reflective of that. So I think this team will go to more of a two-headed monster type of style because Najee just cannot continue to see what he saw last year of like 370 plus touches and expect to continue to get efficiency from him. I think Warren will continue to be involved with this team. He obviously makes for an unbelievably great handcuff in the chance that anything happens to Harris. But I think regardless, he's going to have playable value because this team is not going to be able to just solely go with Najee Harris at the position. Warren has just looked great as an undrafted free agent. Very, very happy to see this as another running back that you can add to your team with some value. Upcoming schedule for him: Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Atlanta. Cincy and Indy is not one I want to play him in, but Cincinnati is okay, and Atlanta would be a good matchup for him in a Steelers game that I would expect to be competitive. Last player at the running back position, one we definitely need to cover, is Isaiah Pacheco. 24% rostered, still relatively low. Some of you guys in 14-team leagues, like he's going to be gone. Maybe in some of your well-thought-out 12-team leagues, he might be gone, but still 76% of leagues he's available. Goodbye, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It is over in Kansas City. The Clyde Edwards-Helaire career seems to be just nearing its end in Kansas City. He saw 4 total snaps. I think he had 3 passing snaps. One of them he was blocking, and one snap in a play that they actually ran the ball on. He was run blocking. He had 4 total snaps. Pacheco had 35, McKinnon 24. The big thing here is, so Pacheco obviously had a good game, quality game on the ground, but from a fantasy perspective, not really that valuable. 16 carries for 82 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 0 rushing attempts. Pacheco did run 13 routes, but was not targeted. So the problem here is if he's not able to score in this age of fantasy where PPR, half PPR is the way that people are playing, he might not be able to be the most he's going to have a low floor, basically. Like if this team can't run the ball or is needing to in a trailing game script, Pacheco's not really their guy. Like McKinnon is that guy. So if you guys are in a league with 14-team, deeper league, more bench options, I think McKinnon could be available, and he would be someone I would add because he had like 8 targets, 6 receptions, gives you a better floor. But Pacheco, I mean, you want to have a piece of this offense on the ground, just in the case of like being inside the 5, being at the 1, could run the ball, and Pacheco could be that beneficiary like we saw Clyde at the beginning of this year. Upcoming schedule is okay, not great. The Chargers coming up, that's a good matchup to play him in, but the Rams and Bengals are ones that are a little bit more sketchy to me, but I think certainly a guy you need to add. Moving on to wide receiver, Christian Watson, 9% rostered. A player here who turned 4 catches into 107 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think a lot of people will still want to add him and go crazy to add him, but I think if anyone's a little bit more thoughtful in this, they're going to say, oh, we had 4 catches and he turned into 3 touchdowns. This isn't sustainable. But I think the big thing to pay attention to here, he led the team with 8 targets. He had a 40% target share in this game because they did not throw the ball very often. And honestly, they've been talking about wanting to get Christian Watson involved and kind of force feeding him the ball in my mind. Whenever he's been available and on the field, like he's being targeted on 25% of his routes run. And I think they've been really creative in doing that too. We're seeing the deep plays like we saw this past week. We're seeing deep targets, but we're also seeing plays where they're like just looking to get the ball in his hands and give him yards after the catch opportunities. Those like screen plays, those short yardage plays, they're like, hey, let's see you create. I think now with Doubs being out, with Cobb's status to come back up in the air, I think this is a player that could potentially in for a late season breakout. Like I think the Packers are better off running the football some more like they did this past week. But I don't know, Rodgers was like talking post-game about how happy he was for him. I feel like they really value him in this offense. So I still think this is still a guy you want to like put priority on to add because I do think there could be something here with Watson and Rodgers. The upcoming schedule, not too bad. Tennessee with the team I think they could throw the ball on. Philadelphia is a tough matchup, and then Chicago following. So some matchups here where I think we could play Christian Watson. Like I think coming up this week, you could play him, but it is a risky endeavor. So maybe we learn something here, and then in Chicago a couple weeks from now is someone you could go to and play. Kadarius Toney is the guy I was mentioning that's 50% rostered that I do think we need to talk about. in my mind, Kadarius Toney, I've talked about him way too much in the preseason and getting ready for the year that I absolutely loved him. It never materialized, but it's the fault of the Giants. Like, they just didn't like this guy. He was healthy and they didn't play him. And this is Deebo Samuel. Like, Kadarius Toney is Deebo Samuel, but he's on the Kansas City Chiefs. He ran 23 routes. He's run 23 routes with Kansas City. He has 7 targets. That's a 30.4% target rate. He's barely run enough routes. If this guy gets on the field more often, is running more routes, he's going to be a freak of nature. Like, there were some plays in that game this past week where he's breaking tackles. He's impossible to take down. He makes incredible plays when he's on the field. This past week, 4 for 57 and a touchdown. With Juju potentially being out for, in my mind, like after that hit, could be an extended period. At the very least, it's going to be this week. Like, we know he's not playing this week. If it's an extended period, this opens up the opportunity for him to have a significant role. Like, we saw him play more because Mecole Hardman was also out. Hardman didn't practice at all this week. That's definitely something to pay attention to, because there's a chance that they're missing both Juju and Hardman next week in a matchup against the Chargers. So Toney, in my mind, if he's available, he's the number one priority add for me this week. If he's available in your league, you need to add him. He needs to be, I would expect him to be like 70% by the end of this week once we get through waivers. I'm definitely looking to add him because I think he's just an unbelievable player and skill set that can take this Chiefs offense to another level, like that Tyreek Hill type of level after the catch is what Kadarius Toney is. So make sure he's not available in any more of your leagues heading into Wednesday when your waivers or Tuesday when your waivers are running. Treylon Burks, 20% rostered, is next up. Him and one more wide receiver we have left, and then we'll get to the tight end position. Burks makes his return. And look, I've always talked about the talent from Burks. I love his talent. I think he's an unbelievably good player, a player that at Arkansas demands such a significant share of the offense. I was very, very encouraged to see he comes back. He gets 6 targets, 3 receptions, 24 yards in that game, but he has 76.3% route participation. That's a very good sign that this guy's coming back and he is back fully healthy. So I think that in this offense, I think we can expect him on the field this much moving forward. And I think there's a clear path to becoming the number one wide receiver. Like Westbrook Ikine had a great week, completely unsustainable in my mind. And there's, for me with Burks, he's always been a player that I'm happy to stash and sit on. Like, I'm not going to get upset if I'm sitting on this guy for the whole year because I do love his talent. And I think there's a path to being that number one option in this offense that we have seen with A.J. Brown be a sustainable fantasy asset. I think he's the most talented player in this receiving corps. He's definitely a stash play right now because he has Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Philly next. So those are matchups that you just don't want to play him in. But the rest of season is really good. He's got Jacksonville, LA, Houston, and Dallas. Dallas being the last game of the playoffs, which could be a matchup you might not want to play him in. But those other 3 are definitely matchups where I could see myself playing Treylon Burks if things go the way that I expect them to. So I think Burks is a worthy stash if you have the room for it right now. Last wide receiver, let's go to Nico Collins, 13% rostered. If you guys haven't watched the video with the wide receivers with the best playoff schedule that we dropped last week, go back, check it out. The Houston Texans are a team that is on that list. Nico Collins, 13% rostered. This week he comes back. He leads the team in routes, targets, and receptions. 9 targets, 5 receptions, 49 yards, found the end zone. The big thing here too is Brandon Cooks has made it abundantly clear he's not happy. And I think this is starting to seep over into like his actual play on the field. Like, where's his motivation at? And Collins is still a talented player who consistently is like one of those top 20 guys. He's top 20 on the season in average depth of target. He's like that deep play option for this team. But what I like to see this past week was those receptions were coming in those intermediate areas, which to me can point to a little bit more sustainable fantasy success and a better floor for you. The big thing to me is like you have to add this guy because his schedule is really, really good to finish the year. Like, just bear with me here. We have Washington, who are like I think they're outside the top 25 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Miami, I think they're like 23rd. The Browns, who have not been good, who've kind of figured it out against Tua and the Dolphins, but still on the year have not been great. Dallas, tough matchup. But then the playoffs. Kansas City, Tennessee, Jacksonville. All teams bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So Collins could be like a really good late season hit off the waiver wire. There's potential there if Cooks just doesn't really have that attitude to be this number one guy anymore. Tight end position, 2 guys I have for the tight end position. These guys are very high priority in my mind. If you guys are struggling at the tight end position, these guys are immediate help that you can get. Foster Moreau. I added Moreau last week in a lot of the leagues where I'm like plugging away at the tight end position. Moreau's still only 16% rostered. And if you didn't see it through the week last week, they put Darren Waller on injured reserve. So now we're going to be without him for like 4 weeks minimum. That gives Moreau and an offense that values the tight end position so much. Obviously, they had built this offense to be able to work with Darren Waller, and it's still working here with Foster Moreau, who found the end zone this past week, had about 43 yards receiving, I believe. Moreau becomes this number 2 option. Like, he is the second on the team in routes run behind Devontae Adams if you put together the last 3 weeks. He's the number 2 option, it seems. You definitely need to add this guy. Like we've seen with McDaniels last year with Hunter Henry, how often they use the tight end position in the red zone. But Moreau is also a great down-to-down option between the 20-yard lines as well. So I definitely think Moreau is a guy that can give you that great floor, and the floor that few other tight ends have. He's had 4+ targets, 30+ yards every week since he's returned from his injury earlier in the season, back in like week 6. So I think Moreau is a player that's going to be able to return you value and be that guy that you can just kind of leave in that spot, play him each and every week, and you know you're not going to get like a complete and utter dud that you can get from some of these guys off the wire. Another one, if you guys are like looking for someone in a really deep league, Trey McBride. With Zach Ertz out for an extended period, you could also add Trey McBride if neither one of these 2 guys are available. The second guy is Isaiah Likely, 22% rostered. I think he has to be added with Andrews' status still in doubt, because obviously they're coming off the bye week, so we kind of have no clue where Adams is or where Andrews is from a health perspective. And even so, like if Andrews is back, there's a good chance that Likely is still a valuable play, because Bateman is already out for the season and they have 2 tight ends on the field on 50% of plays. That's more than any other team in the NFL. Obviously, they bring these jumbo packages to be able to run the football effectively. That's what they want to do. But the tight ends are out there, and Likely has honestly been very good the last couple of weeks with Andrews not being at 100%. He's the tight end 2 and the tight end 9 in the last 2 weeks before this following week where they were on the bye. So I think Likely is a player you need to add and could be someone that you play even when Andrews is healthy, which is a crazy thing to think about. But honestly, this team has a great schedule. I touched on it in our wide receivers video that Andrews could be a huge beneficiary of the fact that their opposing defenses have not been good against the pass. But if you look at the next 4 weeks for the Ravens, they go Carolina, Jacksonville, Denver being a tough matchup, and then the Steelers. The Steelers are, I believe, allowing the 2nd most passing yards per game in the NFL right now. So some really good matchups for Likely, some really good matchups for this passing offense, and there's a chance that Likely is still productive even if Andrews is out. But if Andrews is not available, Likely is a must-play type of player that could be a weekly top 8 option in my mind. So make sure you're adding Likely off the wire. All right, those are our 10 must-add players for this week. Again, these guys are very high value adds to me. Make sure you're spending your fab. Make sure you're spending that priority. Do not sit on your fab and end up not spending any of it or only 50% of it come the end of the season. This is the week, guys. This is the week to spend on these players on the wire. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and go check out our partners over at BETFRED. Monday Night Football tonight, and for the rest of the season, if you sign up, deposit $50, bet $50 on any market, they're going to give you $250 in free bets. That link to sign up is down below in the description. Go check out BETFRED. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.